When rendering out a project, there's a couple of different options as to what can be done with your scene's background. Although your backdrop usually displays just as a solid black color when a view is rendered, things don't always have to be so void. The color can change, a still image can be used to replace the color, you can even add an animation into the background of a render. In this video, we'll take a look at all your options. I've got a scene loaded named Render Background. You can find it in the Working Files folder for this chapter. Let's go ahead and play back our animation. As you can see, we've got an animated 3ds Max logo racing from one side of the screen to the other. The text has been animated using a Path to Form modifier, which, if interested, you can learn more about in the chapter on animation. Let's stop the playback and settle in right at frame 136 on our timeline. That'll give us a fairly good look at the lettering right before it leaves the screen, exit stage left. Okay, let's take a look at the scene when rendered. I'll head up to the right-hand side of the toolbar, clicking on Render Production. If we wanted to change the background color, we've got a couple of different ways that we can access the controls. Having a clear shot at the pull-down menus, we could go under the Rendering pull-down, choosing Environment. We could also, directly inside the rendered frame window, have clicked on the Environment and Effects button just to the right of the Render Setup options. Or we could simply choose to use the keyboard shortcut for Environment, which is the number 8. I'm going to do that. The color swatch that you see in the upper left-hand corner controls your background's color. To change that color, you'd simply click directly on top of the swatch. Let's change the color of our background to light gray by typing in 50 for the value. Once that's in place, we'll close the dialog and render our scene. So making a background color change is both quick and easy. Let's say that we wanted to change that background color to a darker red. Reopening the Effects dialog, we'd again click on the color swatch. To achieve the color I'm aiming for, I'll simply take my saturation ramp to right around 150. Closing the box and rendering again, you can see the difference that's made. If we instead wanted to load an image into the background, we'd click on the None button below Environment Map. You'll see that entry directly to the right of the background color swatch. When the browser opens, we'll choose Bitmap. Let's now navigate to the Chapter 15 folder in the exercise files. When we get there, we'll choose Street Background. The image has been provided courtesy of 123rf.com. Let's go ahead and load that in. Back in the Environment dialog, you'll see the name now listed below Environment Map. If we render things up, you'll now see that image serving as our background. Now, I mentioned that you could even load an animation as a background. It's actually done using the very same procedure as when loading a still picture. Let's first take a look at the movie we'll use. Let's now go ahead and load that into place. To do so, we'll click directly on the button below Environment Map. Now that button currently reads Street Background. Back in the browser, we'll again choose Bitmap. In our Chapter 15 folder, we'll select Animated BG Red. With that in place, let's go ahead and render frame 136 again. Here's how the clip would turn out if the whole project was rendered. It's called Max Logo Red BG if you'd like to take a look at it for yourself. It's in the Working Files folder for this chapter. Using another animated clip along the same lines, this one though with a different color scheme, let's also try Animated BG Blue, which looks like this. Let's get the Environment dialog back up and we'll load in the animated clip. We'll again click on the button directly below the heading Environment Map. Back in the browser, we'll choose Bitmap. In our Working Files folder for this chapter, we'll choose the movie Animated BG Blue. Rendering things up, here's how the scene turns out. That one, fully rendered out, would turn out looking like this. I've named it Max Logo Blue BG, and it too can be found in the Working Files folder for this chapter. So that's all there is to it. Now, what's also neat is because the background movie is essentially just another map, it can be taken into the material editor and altered or adjusted to make whatever changes might be needed. Here's how you can do that. Let's close the render frame window and move the Environment and Effects dialog a little to the right. Heading up to the right-hand side of the toolbar will then open up the material editor. Now you could also simply type M on your keyboard. To get the animated blue background map into the material editor, back in the environment dialog, we'll simply hold down on its name and drag it directly onto one of the sample slots in the material editor. When we get it there, we'll want to answer instance. Let's open up a larger viewing window by double-clicking directly on top of the map. If we wanted to rotate the background, having the design go maybe more horizontally than it does vertically, we could simply change the W angle. Let's try a value of 90. If we wanted to instead make a color change, let's do this. On the right-hand side of the editor, directly below the horizontal row of icons, you'll see a button that says Bitmap. Go ahead and click on that. In the browser, we'll head down to the C's, clicking on Color Correction. When the Replace Map dialog pops up, let's answer Keep Old Map as Submap. Using the control handle for Hue Shift, let's take the value to 80. This will give us a purple color. If we wanted, for an example, the color yellow, we'd take the Hue Shift value into negative territory, right around 150. Wanting to increase the saturation of our color, let's use the saturation setting, ripping the handle to the far right. Let's now return to the top of the settings and click directly on the button that reads Animated BG Blue. That'll take us back to the actual background map that we have loaded into our render. Down at the bottom of the settings for the movie, you can even change the way the clip plays back in the render in a couple of different ways. When your cursor turns into the shape of a hand, go ahead and right-click. In the menu, drop down to the entry named Time, clicking on it. Here, you can control when the animated background actually starts during the animation, how fast it plays, even what it does after it plays one time through. Your selections there are to have the movie loop, ping-pong back and forth, or play once and hold. With the changes we've made, let's go ahead and render one last time. So that's what's up with changing the look of your scene's rendered background. Now you've got a couple of new options in your rendering toolbox when wanting to dress your projects up a little. I'll go ahead and save this out as Render Background Completed if you'd like to take a look.